Thank you so much for joining me in the studio today, June. This is a real pleasure and such an honour because I've been following your work and fangirling you, and also admiring everything that you've done for not just Aboriginal people, but for the impact that you've had and change you've made for women in Australia. So it's been really amazing. But for those that don't know you and where you're from, do you mind sharing a bit about yourself and your mob, and then your journey from Fitzroy Crossing to the United Nations?
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. My name is June Oscar. I'm a Bunuba woman, and I come from a little town in the central Kimberley, Fitzroy Crossing, which is the southernmost point of Bunuba country, which country extends northwards and westwards, but the majority of Bunuba people live in the Fitzroy Valley, and it's the place where I was born and I was raised, went to primary school there, and learnt to become the person that I am from being around family on Bunuba country, and schooled there, and then off to Perth when I was at secondary age level for schooling. But I had returned to Fitzroy in my working life and worked for community organisations in the areas of women's issues, of language, law and culture and land, and the movement to outstations in the 80s with Marawarrawara Aboriginal Corporation. So it's the place of my early foundations, which had shaped the person that I'd become now, and the adult, and being able to, as an adult, carry my responsibility to community. So it's the place of my learning, and the place that holds my heart.
And you've had an extraordinary journey. What made you want to release your memoirs this year?
Oh, wow. I didn't want to. I was asked to. I was invited to by people involved in REC WA, or Reconciliation Western Australia, I should say. And I just thought that this was an important invitation that I should take up, because I know how important stories are for people, for everyone. Everyone's stories are important, and there should be more opportunities where we record our stories and we share our stories to help inform each other into understanding and appreciating our journeys and what we hold to be true, and why we choose to do the things that we do. And I think it's important that we see that as an opportunity of helping contribute to each other's understanding. Think of how important stories are, and stories do matter. And it's important that we all have, we must acknowledge that we all have legacies to be recorded. And when I think of my story, I'm thinking of my mother and my grandmother and the countless women who came before them, but whose names have not been recorded, are carried in my story. So my story is theirs, and this memoir honours them.
What you're saying as well, it's a lot of Aboriginal women and men haven't ever been recognised or really acknowledged for the work that they've done for a very long time.
That's right. And that is about, that is what is truth-telling and remembering and honouring. At least that's how I see it.
So my next question is around your journey, and you've held some of the most significant roles in Indigenous advocacy in Australia, including as Social Justice Commissioner. So what responsibility and perhaps a vulnerability comes with documenting that public and deeply personal legacy for the world to see?
Well, it was a tremendous opportunity. I felt stepping into the role of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Social Justice Commissioner position at the Australian Human Rights Commission, and it was the first time that an Aboriginal woman was in the role after 25 years of the role being established, and, you know, led by some incredible Indigenous men leaders. So for me, as the first woman in the role, I thought it was absolutely important to bring the voices of First Nations women and girls and gender diverse peoples into that space to elevate their voices around the issues that mattered for them. And so that was exciting in itself, and hence the national project that I was able to design to meet and collect their truths, their stories around what mattered in their lives on a daily basis. Over the 7 years, we were able to focus on consulting, engaging, listening to First Nations women and girls and gender diverse peoples right across Australia, in urban communities, in regional towns, regional settings, remote communities, very remote communities, and into women prisons and female youth detention centres, so that everyone as possible, we couldn't get to every single community, but we were able to reach a diversity of places, communities where people lived and where they were at the time, and to hear from them and include their voices in this process of the Wiyaniutangani national engagements. Coming out of the commissioner role and into the Wiyaniutangani Institute for First Nations Gender Justice and Equality was never about me, but about what we leave behind to improve the lives of others. And I wanted to open doors for our women and keep those doors open. There is a thread that runs from the kitchen tables to Fitzroy Crossing to the rooms at the UN, and that thread is women's voices. The memoir is about how women's voices can change the world. What we know on the ground matters to making of better worlds. So that's how I saw my role, and I lived throughout that at the forefront. This is about creating and making best of the opportunity that I have to include the voices of others that have not been listened to, not been heard, and to bring them into the space. There is a responsibility and deep gratitude that I feel and I carry, that I have been entrusted with so many stories over the years, and this memoir is one way of honouring that. And I cannot tell my story without telling something of the women whose lives are woven through it. My grandmother, my mother, my aunties, the women I have sat with on country, my bosses in law and ceremony and in communities right across this country. Public life and personal life are not separate for Aboriginal women. we are always carrying our families, our communities, our country with us. And putting parts of your life onto a page means trusting that the reader will hold them with care. And in this case, engaging with Victoria Laurie, she listened, and she always listens well. And it was wonderful to work on this project with her.
Yeah. So when you think about your leadership journey, how has your definition of leadership evolved from when you started to where you are now? And what does that mean for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women to see leadership through your story?
It's true for many of us, Indigenous folk. Our old people carried the knowledge and responsibility of an interconnected society. This is the leadership of intergenerational responsibility. It is beyond any one individual. They are also deeply inspiring. Living through apocalypse, carrying our knowledges into a colonial reality, and not letting our peoples disappear. Our peoples right across this continent faced devastation, and still we are here. And look at who we are. We are remarkable, and I want every young person to feel that, to know that, and to hold that. To our young women and girls and our gender diverse young people, I say, you are already leading. The work is to see it in yourself, to trust your own knowing, and to keep one another close as you go. If I may just point to the work of Wiyaniudangani Institute for First Nations Gender Justice and Equality, the Institute embodies this. It is about collective identity and self-worth, that everyone matters. No one needs to be a leader. We all are leaders. And I want our young people to know they don't have to go it alone. That is what the Institute is for, to make sure the next generation has the support that so many of us did not have.
So this week is National Reconciliation Week, and the theme for this year is All In. So how do corporates and industry and communities move beyond symbolism into ways where they can actually be all in, and what does that mean?
Well, when I think of the theme of National Reconciliation Week this year, All In is a call to action. It means to me that we believe in truth in its entirety, that we believe in First Nations people, our knowledges and our cultures. It means Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians standing together in our shared fight for justice. We have to work together, sit at the same table, listen deeply, and believe it is possible to transform structural and systemic discrimination. we all have influence. And we must believe there is a part we play in making change happen for the better.
You've championed truth-telling for a long time, especially for First Nations women, and through the work that you're doing at Wiyaningu What do you think mainstream Australia still fundamentally misunderstands about this process, and what truths have we really not reckoned with?
Truth-telling is big, and it's so important. Truth-telling is a practice, not a moment. What mainstream Australia sometimes misses is that truth-telling is not only about pain. It is also about everything we have kept alive. Our languages, our country, our kinship, our knowledges, the continuity of who we are. Through Wiyaningu we listened to thousands of women and girls and gender diverse peoples across the country. What came through was not only the weight of what they have carried, it was their wisdom, their strength, and their solutions. Our women have always been peace builders, holding families and communities and organisations together through the hardest of times, and still raising the next generation with love and care. The truth we have not fully reckoned with is the cost of that work. And the truth is also that our peoples have the solutions. We haven't quite understood and acknowledged that. The Institute exists to make sure these truths do not sit in a report on a shelf. We are determined to use truth to speak to and transform power structures. I use the language of peace to highlight that we do not have it yet, that we must reckon with our colonial past of violence and conflict in order to heal and transform it.
When you're saying, I think that's the most important part, like how you're framing it, the peace building. It's I think that's often really missed by people as well. They don't realise actually this is going to create a more united Australia and a more united community with less division and less problems in the future if people are on the same wavelength and if people are thinking, they have a meeting of the minds essentially. So no, it's very powerful. Do you believe Australia is still at a tipping point for reconciliation, and how do we achieve structural change in the country?
Tipping points are not moments we arrive at. They are made by all of us through the steady work of believing change is possible. What I see is a generation of young people who are not waiting. They are claiming their place, their voice, their leadership, and that gives me real hope. To shift truth-telling into real change, we have to trust what communities already know. Our communities have the answers. They have always had the answers. It means resourcing what is community-led and funding the work properly and over time. investing in the work that needs to happen over a decent period of time to get traction, to have impact. And this means housing, languages, healing on country, women's leadership, young people's leadership. All of these conditions for our peoples to thrive, not just survive. And it means government holding itself to the same accountability it asks of our communities, because that does not happen. Our communities are already doing the peace-building work every day. The question for the country is whether the structures around them will recognise it, fund it, and learn from it.
So as we look ahead, what gives you hope and what keeps you concerned? And looking ahead in 20 years' time, how would you like someone to look at your memoirs at this specific point in time?
Well, my hope is our young people. Their confidence and determination to shape what comes next. Travelling the country for Wiyani Udangani, I saw cultural resurgence everywhere and a reclaiming of our places on country and a relearning of our knowledges to care for place, for each other, for our kin. This is hope. Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians standing together for change is hope for me. What concerns me is the pace of climate change and the loss of senior peoples who carry song and knowledges to ease the pain of this change. We need to support knowledge transference. We needed to care for all beings and to survive. It concerns me that violence against our women and children continues, that the steady work of healing is so often underfunded between the moments of public attention. If someone picks up this memoir in 20 years, I hope they understand that this was a moment when our women told the truth in their own voices and that we listened. And I hope it is read alongside other First Nations women's stories, not as a single voice, but as part of a chorus.
Thank you so much for joining me today. Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure, and looking at your whole life and your journey, you've already forged new paths for First Nations women in the country and made a significant change. So, yeah, it's been a pleasure to hear your story and hear all your life's work. So thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity, for listening.